if and when we stop the attacks on our healthcare in this budget bill, it's going to be our stories that are going to convince the senators again that their constituents rely on these healthcare programs, that you can't just cut nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid and not have your constituents suffer and die.
Welcome to the Practivist Pod, the practice of activism made practical.
Today we are talking pardons, attacks on education with Harvard fighting back, how we can protect the judiciary, and how we can stand up to the felon and wannabe king currently occupying the White House.
And then we talk about the power of personal stories with the founder of Healthcare Voices and the host of Care Talk, Laura Packard. I'm Jessica Craven.
I'm Steve Pearson.
Stay strong. It won't be long. Yeah, yeah. We will build a better world.
Well, Steve, what kind of week has it been for you?
I know it's been a tough week of some really scary news. I have to say it has personally been one of the best weeks of my life, watching my daughter graduate from college. I've really been reflecting on the space that we gave ourselves with family coming into town to celebrate our daughter and be in the moment with all of that and put aside everything that's happening in the world just for a few days, while we, celebrate my daughter and everything that she's accomplished, graduating with honors. I talk about her story a little bit with my interview with Laura Packard because, we have a healthcare story around my daughter and what she's had to overcome. But she was a preemie when she was born. She was just 1.5 pounds. She was in the NICU for 4 months. Wow. and had life-saving surgery in the NICU and has had a lot of interventions throughout her life, especially early in her life. Things that the Trump administration and Musk and Doge have been actively going after, regional center, IPs, physical therapy, occupational therapy, all those services that have given her the support that she's needed to thrive. And now she is 22, almost 23. She graduated from her dream school with honors. And, it was just emotional for us, but also, taking in the moments that we have with our family. There's layers to this life. There's a lot of things that we need to pay attention to and go through. But it's really important to take those moments. And I feel rejuvenated, and she's my reason for hope this week too, because all these kids, coming out of college, starting this next chapter of their life, it's always an exciting time of year.
Yeah. That's so amazing. That's beautiful. And yeah, I agree. The kids are very hopeful. It is being around the young people, with all of the challenges they're facing, they are very I get very encouraged being around them as well. So that's great. Congratulations to your daughter and to you. And
thank you. One other thing I'll say just really quickly also that I kind of didn't realize, but they were talking about class of 2025. This particular class was the first class back from COVID. And it's not like COVID had gone away. When she first came to school, they had to, show QR codes and do testing to get into buildings. And it was the beginning of this community coming back. And they had to build this sense of community where over the last, year, and before that, they were shut out from each other. And, just rebuilding that, apparently at Chapman where she went to school, there were all these new clubs that cropped up and all these new activities where people were really starved to come together and find new ways to be in community with each other. And it shows the resilience of this particular group of kids who have really had to endure a lot, and they have, in many ways a scary future. But they are a resilient lot, and it does give me a lot of hope.
Yeah, they have to be. Like, they literally have no choice but to be resilient. And yeah, I mean, it is a wonderful thing to see. And yeah, the just watching people sort of come back from COVID and the young people sort of return to community. Yeah, it's a powerful thing. And I'm glad to hear that she had a great experience there. That's great. And as I often say,
how has your week been?
Well, it's been good. And, well, not good. No, it's been terrible from a democracy standpoint. But yeah, I think it is, during this time, as I emphasize to readers all the time, the need to sort of take breaks and get back to family and or community is huge. It is really, really important that we do take days where we unplug from the news and go and be with our kids or be with our parents or be with our whoever. And I did a little bit of that this weekend, just taking even one day where you just say, okay, today is like no social media, no news. It's very restorative. And then you come back and go, oh, wow, look at all the crazy shit that happened this weekend. But these things are how we get through. I mean, that is what my understanding is. One of the key ways to fight fascism or to survive fascism is to go places where fascism does not thrive. And those are places where there is love and community and art and, music and joy. So yeah, it sounds like, you did that this weekend. I tried to do that this weekend. And it's important. Yeah. So it was good. Good.
Then you turn the news back on. You're like, wait, he did what? Yeah. He said what? What? Yeah. So yeah.
But you don't even need to follow that in real time because it just, I mean, there's so much of it. I mean, this is such a relentless onslaught all the time that the only healthy response is to say, like, I don't have to follow every single outrageous speech he makes. I mean, I never listen to Trump speak anyway, but like,
I don't anymore.
He did insane shit over the weekend, but he does insane shit every single day. And so sometimes what sanity looks like is just turning our back to it completely, just for a moment.
We rightfully complain about how much time he spends playing golf on his golf course, but I would actually prefer that. Like, just stay on the course, play all the golf you want, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's true. Just don't talk. Whatever you do, don't open your mouth. But yes, unfortunately, he does open his mouth. So speaking of crazy corruption stuff, shall we talk about some crazy corruption stuff?
Yeah, let's have at it.
Which one shall we? It's a grab bag. It's a veritable cornucopia of corruption. I mean, I think this week has been, even in Trump time, it's been crazy. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, we've heard news of 3 different sets of pardons that are just staggering. That if any other president in American history had pardoned people of this ilk and with this level of criminality behind them, media would be exploding.
Transparent, too. Like, not even sneaky.
No. His mother gave me $1 million, so pardon for you. Like, it's unbelievable. And it is really worth noting how the press, the mainstream media seems to have just lost the will to fight. Like, they just, unless it's about Biden and how he shouldn't have been president for that, they just they're not even pretending anymore. I mean, do you feel differently about that, or is that just what you're seeing as well?
I don't. I was thinking about this morning because I rarely watch the mainstream media anymore, but I flipped on MSNBC this morning, and I'm, and we do a show too, and so we're very, conscious of real estate. Like, we have a certain amount of time for which to talk about things. So what are we going to talk about, and how much time are we going to devote to them? And I know for most, news shows, it's not a podcast. It's even less. You've got like minutes or 5-minute chunks to talk about things. So if I'm having an abundance of grace, I'm trying to think about how they use their real estate. But the problem isn't a new one. They just get caught up in the next shiny thing, whatever is going to sell more soap. And usually that's crazy shit that Trump says, or, like you talked about the stuff around Biden, that's going to keep viewers watching. Unfortunately, that's going to get retention. So that's what they'll keep talking about. And so they don't have the real estate to talk about. I mean, to call it corruption is to lighten it up. I mean, like you mentioned, this convicted felon is pardoned because his mom went to a Trump event where she paid $1 million into his Bitcoin, and then he pardons his son. I mean, this would be the biggest scandal in the history of the presidency in any other kind of time. Yeah. But the media is, I haven't seen it anywhere except for, printed journalism and of course in progressive alternative media where we have a lot of people who are really spending the time to talk about these issues. But it's a huge, huge problem. And the only solution is to keep supporting independent journalism and to really lean into that.
Yeah, for sure. And to keep saying, this is not normal. I think it's really important for us to restate our values over and over again right now. Because otherwise, it just starts to feel like this is okay, this is just the way things are, and I guess this is just the way things are always going to be, instead of saying, no, this is the way things are right now, but this is not the way things are supposed to be. This is not the way functioning democracies work, and we cannot accept this. We have got to remember what a principle is and insist on living by it ourselves, and demanding that our lawmakers return to some form of principle and rule of law. I mean, obviously no one is perfect. No one does it perfectly. Yes, we will be disappointed by people, but this is a whole other universe of corruption, of crookedness, of depravity. We should not accept it. And I literally, I'm sure you find this with your own child, I have to say to my child who's 15 and doesn't remember a time before Trump, this is not normal. This is not the way we're supposed to be living. And they don't even know that because they've never experienced anything other. It's just fucking depressing, but it's also...
That's a great point. Yeah.
We must tell people, young people especially, all of us, that this is not normal and that this is not the status quo. This is not something we should just accept, ever. If they don't hear us saying that, they're just going to assume, okay, I guess this is just what government is.
This is the fight of our time now. If we want to turn this around and move away from the plutocracy and all of the outright corruption, we've got to make sure that our kids are growing up in a world where they don't want that and they're not getting those examples either. Yeah, right. And that comes down to parenting and family, literally family values. Who thought that we would be using those words? But, values, those things that we all used to claim to care so much about. I still care about them, and I know you do too, and tens of millions of Americans do. And that's the thing, is that I think that a lot of Americans do care about values. The majority, I would argue. And so that's why this moment is so strange, because as much as we like to say, this is not who we are, I really don't think this is who most of us are. It is who a minority of us are, for sure. But I don't think it's who the majority of us are. I don't think it is either. I think the thing that is permeating is obviously the outcropping of extreme capitalism, where it's, get what you can get, by any means necessary. And if you're able to cheat and steal or hurt somebody else or whatever to get something for yourself, then the end justifies the means. Then you're being wily, or you're being creative, or you're being an entrepreneur, or, and I think that's the root of the worst part of capitalism and what it's done to our society is really fed into the us against them mentality, the zero sum game, the idea that there's only a little bit of pie, so you've got to get all of yours that you can at the expense of others.
Right.
So
yeah. Woo! We got deep, but it's true.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll figure all that out next week.
Yeah, next week. First, we're going to talk about attacks on education. Fun times.
Fortunately, yeah, talking about young people, and this attack on Harvard specifically, this is something Harvard fighting back that all of our higher education institutions are really watching and, obviously have a very vested interest in. But to suspend visas for international students, like the foundation of our country, of our innovation, of building like America as a leader in technology and innovation, has been to open up our doors to, thought leaders from all over the world. And, it just makes no sense unless you're just a vindictive, stupid asshole, and you don't like it that Harvard is standing up to you.
Often it feels like this administration, and I read someone saying this yesterday, that it's almost what we're achieving are all of Vladimir Putin's goals for our country. It's just the destruction of our country, the destruction of everything that made us powerful, everything that made us the wealthiest country in the world, the leader in medical research, and all of these things. We're just destroying it. You don't get to where we've gotten without education. You don't get to it without bringing in diverse talent, and it's supporting science, you don't. So yeah, it's hard to understand what MAGA thinks they're going to accomplish, because above all, they seem to worship the dollar, but like the dollar will go away from a country that no longer innovates. So it's unclear, force people to have babies, I guess, but how will you feed them when everyone is poor? It's just, there's no internal logic. And that's the thing that's so frustrating. So yeah. It is clear that they have decided that higher education is a threat to their goals. Although I'm not sure they've thought it through enough, quite frankly.
They haven't thought it through, but it's absolutely a threat to their goals. And that's why Republicans for decades, for really half a century, have been attacking education and trying to privatize education. And, not only is it profit, it's always got to look at the grift, but, keeping the electorate uninformed, uneducated serves their goals, makes it easier to divide and talk about the culture war between those Democrat elite liberals, Ivy League educated, they don't understand us, they don't get it kind of thing, it's I'll tell you, we made the mistake, as I said, enjoying our time with Lucy and family of rewatching Idiocracy on Saturday night.
No.
And
don't watch it now. It's become a documentary.
My sister-in-law, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law had to see it, and so we watched it with them. And this is how it happens. Attack education and Brando. It's what plants crave.
Yeah, it's a good way to undermine democracy. And how can we fight back? We can support higher education. We can educate ourselves. We can read history and teach history. And I can refuse individually, as can you, as can anybody, can refuse to be uneducated. Education, yes, we need education as young people, but I blew my education in high school for a variety of reasons that we don't need to go into here. And I have really determined as an adult to educate myself. So if there is an area of history that I don't know about, I set out to learn it, because it is not acceptable to me to be uneducated about great swaths of my country's history. And so can you, and so can all of us. They can try to stop us from being educated, but we have these supercomputers at our fingertips that will really prevent them from blocking us from these facts. So, we've got books, we've got libraries. So, fuck them. quite frankly. And, rebel by getting educated. Rebel by getting even more educated than you would have otherwise. And if you're young,
I love that.
The grown-ups are telling you not to get educated. Rebel, for God's sake. Yeah, like
I think you and I shared many parallels in our high school experience. But yeah,
it didn't happen there. Did not happen there for me.
Didn't
not
happen there
fault.
for me, really.
Yeah.
Either. Not totally my fault.
Yeah.
But that's a good segue into Harvard obviously sued the Trump administration. The judiciary has been giving me a lot of hope, frankly. They've been handing Trump, block after block, loss after loss, and we'll see where it goes. But as a result of that, there's been a lot of attacks on the judiciary by this president, including a provision that was put in this budget reconciliation bill. Wait, did I just say a judiciary provision in a budget reconciliation bill? Why would that be in there? Maybe you can explain that to us.
Why, indeed. I don't think anybody can explain it. It is, they've turned this bill into an omnibus, meaning a giant bill with everyone's little wish list item shoved in it, except that it's a reconciliation bill, which is supposed to only have items relating to the budget. And so my hope is this will get taken out in the Senate when it goes through what's called the bird bath, technical thing, but that's where they strip out provisions that can't or really are not supposed to be in a reconciliation bill. But basically right now there is a provision that essentially defangs federal judges and makes it impossible for them to enforce contempt orders. And it is basically a little gift to Donald Trump because he is facing several contempt orders right now or about to be found in contempt. People in his administration are about to be found in contempt. This will make it impossible for judges to enforce it, which basically it defangs our federal judiciary. What do they have if they can't? There's no recourse left for them.
It makes him a king. It's game over. It's a huge gift to Donald Trump. It's a
huge gift to Donald Trump and a really bad thing. And so I really encourage people, when you call your representatives about this bill, to just mention it. To just mention it to your senators. Like, I know that thing is in there and you guys better take it out. It doesn't belong. And it's so incredibly dangerous. If you just mention contempt, they'll know what you're talking about. Because they know damn well it doesn't belong in there. And hopefully they know it's disastrous. And by the way, under a Democratic president, could really come back to bite them in the ass. I mean, these things all come around. So, they may delight in their freedom from any consequences right now, but eventually that will become someone else's freedom from consequences.
Right.
So,
doesn't seem to stop them, just the way that, McConnell, had a stranglehold over the Senate and used the filibuster for his own gains and then refused to use it. But anyway, not to digress, I just brought up Mitch McConnell.
Don't do that.
Sorry. Like we've had enough. Let's not go there. But there is the Marshals Act, which I want you to talk about. But I think it's really, really interesting because we had an interview a few episodes back with Glenn Kirshner, and we talked a lot about the Marshals and the big question around this contempt thing. If the administration, if Trump or someone directly under him is found in contempt, it would be the marshals that would be intervening and enforcing that contempt charge. Pam Bondi, is in charge of the marshals. Essentially, she's the one. The marshals pledge an oath to the Constitution, but the Attorney General is the one that directs the marshals to do their work.
Right.
So it creates this very difficult situation where obviously Pam Bondi in the Justice Department has been weaponized and is fully in the pocket of Trump. So can you talk about this Marshals Act and why we should all be supporting it?
Yeah, well, I'm not a full-on expert on it, but basically it's the Marshals Act. It's S 1873, HR 3607. This is legislation that would return the U.S. Marshals to the federal judiciary from the executive branch. And this is something that would give them a little bit more freedom and also enable them to protect judges from attacks that are coming from the executive branch, which is what we're seeing right now. Is that The executive branch, which should not be doing this, needless to say, is attacking the federal judiciary. And so they are also very concerned for their personal safety. And we know there have been all kinds of threats. There's these pizza deliveries that keep happening to federal judges where they're getting pizzas at their house that are basically, or you're like, oh, it's a pizza delivery, but it's a tacit threat. It's basically saying, we know where you live, and we're watching you. And they're very scared. And they are also doing an incredible job of upholding the rule of law and the Constitution right now, far better than the Supreme Court. But that's a separate issue.
Right.
Anyway, so there is a movement to sort of bring the marshals back to the federal judiciary. And if you want to support this, you can actually send a letter to your representatives asking them to co-sponsor this bill. And you can do that by texting sign PNDBNT to 50409, which is ResistBot, and we will put it in the show notes as well, so that I don't have to repeat that 1,000 times, or we'll put it up on the screen, But yeah, you should do it. Yeah.
Definitely do it. It's a scary proposition to have Pam Bondi in charge of the U.S. Marshals. I'll leave it there. So at the very least, we all need to be making a lot of noise about this, because the thing that pushes back is public sentiment.
That's
so
right.
The more they hear about this, whether or not this piece of legislation actually can get passed, the more that they know the public are onto it, they're aware of it, the more noise that we make, the less likely it is that they will do something, really scary with the marshals. And so this is where we make our voices heard.
That's right.
And speaking of making our voices heard, I just want to once again plug the No Kings protest happening on June 14th. We're going to keep asking you to save the date, because we need this to be the biggest protest we've had to date.
Yes.
And this is going to coincide with President Trump's birthday. Did I say President Trump? I try not saying that, because
it happens. It slips out.
Yeah, it slips out. Trump's birthday, where he is having a military-style, authoritarian dictator-style parade in his honor. We need to show up everywhere and really make our voices loud, and it's got to be bigger than all these other ones. We are not a nation of kings. Our nation was expressively built to move away from a monarchy into a representational government. So.
Yep. And when people say, oh, what's the point? It's just, what difference will it make? It's all the difference. In a moment like this where you are fighting a dictator, the only thing that makes a difference is a popular, peaceful uprising. That is the thing and we've seen it in history over and over and over again, especially when dictators and authoritarians start attacking the courts. Heather Cox Richardson was giving an example just in last night's newsletter about Israel a couple of years ago, when Netanyahu started attacking the courts, and, hundreds of thousands of people turned out in the streets to say no. Like, no, no, no. And that is what is needed now in the United States. Just to show our faces, to show the world, to show each other, to show the government that we will not tolerate where this is going. I can't over stress how important it is that we go. You don't have to make a sign if you don't want to. You don't have to dress in a costume if you don't want to. Just physically go. Be a body that is counted at one of these protests. Everybody, please, I am begging you and urging you.
It works. We have seen it just in the last 100 days of this administration, how when we show up and make our voices heard, it puts them on their heels. And we've seen the Trump administration backtrack on policies because they are so unpopular with the American people. So they will keep pushing, and they will try to do everything that they can get away with. No doubt about it. But when we make our voices heard, then they're like, okay, well, maybe we can't go this far. That's what's been happening. So keep at it. Show up. The link will be, again, in our show notes, the No Kings protest. It's nokings.org, I believe.
That's what it is. Nokings.org.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about our reasons for hope. Jess, what do you got this week that's giving you hope?
I'm changing my reason for hope. I had another one, but I'm going to talk about something else instead. So my reason for hope, you guys know I'm a big history fan, right? And right now I am reading a book called The Power Broker by Robert Moses. And by Robert Caro. It is about Robert Moses. It's very confusing. And it's a 1,200 page. It is a massive, massive undertaking. It was published in 1974. And it is really an examination of a guy who amassed huge amounts of power in New York City, starting in the 20s, and basically built New York City. Everything that we know about New York City, every roadway, almost every park, he basically built the city as we know it. But he did so in a way that became increasingly corrupt and increasingly cruel, displaced something like 500,000 people. And it gives me hope in the sense that reading about history, learning about how in the past we have dealt with corruption, we have dealt with power-hungry, maniacs, basically, and how even this guy was so ensconced in New York government that it seemed like no one would ever get him out. And he did do a lot of great stuff, but by the end, people really hated him and they couldn't get him out. And then they did. And reading these kinds of things just reminds me of the sort of vast scope of history, how there are always corrupt people, generally men, not always, but often, who get a bit of power and abuse it and will not let it go, and that eventually every single one of them is brought down, if by nothing else than just time and, mortality. But history I find to be very, very soothing because it reminds us that these things are patterns, and that there are always going to be people who abuse their power. And it comforts me somewhat to realize that these things happen in cycles and then these people are gone. And we take power back and put it into more proper channels, as was done in New York. And I guess it's just history gives me a lot of hope. And that maybe doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you haven't read this book, you should really read it. It's pretty extraordinary.
It makes so much sense. And, there's so much that's unprecedented that we haven't seen before about this particular regime and what's happening in our country right now. But as you said, the crux of it is what we have been fighting throughout history. And that's people taking power, people otherizing folks to try to stay in power. It's, I wish I could say I read an epic, I think you said 700-page book to tell me this, but I did watch 1,200 page book. We did watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
There you go.
Like a month ago, and that was a lot. That was really comforting, just to see like it was the same kind of shit that we're fighting against, and someone with ethics trying to stand up against, corruption in government and, oligarch, who was controlling everything. And, so that makes a ton of sense and it gives me a lot of hope. And, so thank you for sharing that. And
what is your reason for hope this week, Steve? We know it has to do with your daughter, but tell us more.
I teased it earlier. It's just, and I actually talked about it earlier, so I don't need to, restate too much. But just seeing my daughter and all these, young people about to start this new chapter in their lives and the resilience in which they have shown living in a time of existential threat and dread from climate change, of war, of this, occupant of the White House, this Trump regime, and the attacks on education, living through COVID. I mean, it's incredible.
Gun violence.
To grow up. Gun violence, the number one leading killer of young people right now, gun violence, which seems to be consistently unanswered by legislators, although we have seen some movement there. And then, to have all of that and to still be excited and in community and ready for the next step and wanting to, make a better life and make a better future. How can you not be inspired by that, and just the goodness of human will to live and to thrive, that gives me a lot of hope. So, and like you said, that in context of history, this is just our life's work. This is the whole thing about the Practivist pod. You know, we can't live and die with every win and loss. We have to know that we do what we can every day to move forward. And sometimes we have good years and good stretches, and sometimes we have really dark times, but we will get through them. So
that's right. And sometimes these terrible corrupt eras, it's like plants growing out of burnt ground after a massive wildfire. It's like sometimes you get to sort of start over and build something that is unimaginably better than what was. So that's what I'm hoping for.
That's the crux. And for another episode, and I know you talked with People to Judge a little bit about this, but we will rebuild. We'll get through this and we'll rebuild, and then that's going to be an exciting time about how do we reimagine and reconstruct our government and make sure that it's working for everybody. So
that's right. So as they say in Last of the Mohicans, stay alive no matter what occurs.
I will find you.
That is my mantra right now. Stay alive. Just stay alive. Looking for Daniel Day-Lewis around every corner. Where is he? Anyway.
In that glorious long hair. So,
yes.
He was good in that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's enough for us. We'll be back on the other side of the interview with some inspiration from some of our listeners. Until then, here's our interview with Laura Packard. Laura Packard is a healthcare advocate and content creator, founder of Healthcare Voices, and host of the Care Talk podcast. In 2017, she was diagnosed with cancer, and after 6 months of chemotherapy and a month of radiation treatment, she's been in remission ever since. And she just celebrated her birthday on Friday. So happy belated birthday, fellow Gemini, and thanks for joining.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. How did you celebrate your birthday?
It was pretty uneventful. Let's see, what did I did really boring stuff, like go to the grocery store and get free smoothies on my birthday.
I'm a big smoothie fan, so yeah. My birthday was Saturday. I think we talked about this, and my daughter just graduated from college, so that's how I celebrated my birthday, which was the best birthday ever. But anyway, you've been a real leader in healthcare space, especially in the power of storytelling to affect change and put pressure on lawmakers. One thing that we talk about a lot on our show is building resilience in this movement. So can you talk about your journey as a healthcare advocate? Obviously we know how you got your start, but what's that been like? What's your experience been like?
Well, I have been doing this work for a while. Back in 2010, I was in Arkansas. The AFL-CIO sent me to Arkansas, and so I was on the ground trying to get the Affordable Care Act passed in the first place. But I had no idea that shift forward several years and it would save my own life. So it was academic to me, except for all the people in Arkansas I met, that it would have been life-changing for them. But it has been life-changing for millions of Americans ever since. I was diagnosed in 2017, and as a self-employed person, my insurance has been the Affordable Care Act. It was junk insurance before that. And if I had still had junk insurance when I was diagnosed, today I would be bankrupt or dead. But instead, I am here on your podcast. Although 8 years ago, while I was fighting cancer, was fighting the attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And here we are again with attacks from Congress and President Trump 8 years later on our healthcare again.
We've been in the same circles fighting for healthcare. I've heard you speak on many like Speaker Pelosi's organizing calls and lots of stuff since then. And obviously we share the same MSW Media Network podcast network too. So you've always seemed to me to be really focused and grounded in your work, which has been very impressive because the stakes are so high and you're working with people and advocates who are, going through the most difficult moments of their life and doing it publicly. So how do you stay grounded? How do you take care of yourself and find balance doing this really important work?
Well, I am a terrible example for balance, but I did get a haircut and a massage for my birthday the day after my birthday. So
There you go. And a smoothie. And don't forget
Yes.
the smoothie.
Yes, and to your audience, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, free smoothie on your birthday, and Smoothie King, discount smoothie, so you could double up like I did and get 2 smoothies.
Nice.
So anyways, how to keep yourself grounded. Every day I get is a bonus because they learned how to cure my type of cancer for many people, not for everybody, but they learned to treat and cure most people with Hodgkin's lymphoma in the 1970s. Now, the treatments themselves have a variety of side effects and so on. You are never the same. So cured doesn't mean you go back to how you were. You are a new version of you. But anyways, because of the advances that the NIH and others funded in the 1970s and beyond, they figured out my type of cancer. So if I had gotten sick before then, I would not be here. We still need so many more cures for people out there, but every day I get is kind of a bonus because for a while it looked like I wouldn't have any more days.
Yeah. Yeah. I find also most people have some healthcare story, knowing, we are frail humans, we are vulnerable. And our daughter, who I just mentioned, graduated from college this weekend, was a micropreemie. She was just 1.5 pounds when she was born, spent the first 4 months of her life in the NICU. And if it wasn't for our excellent health insurance, we would have been bankrupt. And that bill was over $1 million. And the outcomes she had after that this administration is rolling back on, like regional center intervention and the therapies and stuff that she was able to get, that she just graduated with honors from her dream college, and it's an absolute miracle. But it's because of all that help that we had along the way. But my point isn't just to tell her story, but it's also, we found in that NICU community people who were walking through the same things that we did, that spoke the same language that we were speaking. And although there was lots of empathy around us and people who meant well and wanted to help, there's nothing like that common bond of being with someone who's walked through it. I know that's the same with, cancer survivors or people walking through that treatment too. So that's why it's so powerful for people to have this private experience, but to go public with it and share it with others, because it makes people feel not alone and connects this issue that can seem, especially when we're talking about tax policy and get into the weeds of partisan politics. It can seem like it's not really affecting your life, but when you connect it to real issues that you can relate to, that's what moves the needle, right? And that's the work. I've been talking too much because I want to hear you talk about this, but that's the crux of the work that you've been doing. Am I right?
You mentioned my C3 nonprofit at the top of the show, Healthcare Voices, and we offer free trainings for healthcare advocates that want to be able to tell their story, to learn how to write a letter to the editor, to talk to a reporter, to make a selfie video and share your story. So all of those free trainings are available at healthcarevoices.org/learn. And you also mentioned we have a weekly show and podcast, Care Talk, where we not only talk about healthcare issues and help people understand what's going on with the budget and how it's going to affect their healthcare, but we answer people's health insurance and healthcare questions. So that is some of the work that we've been doing. But you're absolutely right that stories and people sharing their stories are how we stopped the repeal of the Affordable Care Act 8 years ago. Those stories convinced Senator McCain and others that was not the way to go. And if and when we stop the attacks on our healthcare in this budget bill, it's going to be our stories that are going to convince the senators again that their constituents rely on these healthcare programs, that you can't just cut nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid and not have your constituents suffer and die. And I think one of the secret weapons of the fight to save the Affordable Care Act 8 years ago was that there was a whole generation of people that were alive because of the Affordable Care Act that could lobby and advocate for it. You know, as I said earlier, without the Affordable Care Act right now, I would be bankrupt or dead. And there's many people like me that are alive because of it, that are able to lobby for it. And same thing with Medicaid. Medicaid has saved so many lives, made so many families' lives better, and given people the opportunity to still be here to advocate for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you went right into my question about what can we do? What's the best way for us to fight back against this, budget abomination bill? And we'll have a link to all of those resources, Healthcare Voices and everything, so people can sign up for those trainings and pitch in that way. Let's get a little bit more into this, GOP budget reconciliation bill. This is really a death bill. Because as you mentioned, so many folks that rely on Medicaid and Medicare, food assistance programs, or just live in an area where hospitals and health centers are going to close down because they won't have the budget to stay open. Can you give us a breakdown for any of our listeners that haven't been listening to Jess and I talking about this every week for the last, month or so? A breakdown of the bill, but also what we can expect now moving into the Senate?
Okay, well, first let's talk about the bill. Various versions of it had been kicked around until finally a version of it that passed the House. And the important point to know is that it cuts hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid. And representatives may say, oh, that's just cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Don't worry about that. But the thing is, Medicaid has lower margins than Medicare, than private insurance. There is no Medicaid to be cut that is not taking healthcare directly away from people. And they may or may not admit it, but if you look at the work requirements program in Georgia, where they have spent tens of millions of dollars to cover a couple thousand people with Medicaid, because they made it so hard to enroll. Many more Georgians are not able to enroll, are not able to stay enrolled. There was an article about their poster child, their example of the person that in Georgia that would benefit from this program. And he got kicked off of the Georgia Medicaid expansion a couple times. And they had to pull strings behind the scenes to make sure their poster child could keep his health insurance. So this is what they want, is they want to make it difficult to stay on Medicaid. They will say they're cutting out abuse, but if they wanted to cut out abuse, they could tackle insurance companies. They could tackle Medicare Advantage fraud by the insurance companies. But instead, they're going after the program with the leanest margins. And the only way they're going to save money in Medicaid, the way that they're looking at it now, is removing healthcare from people. Because if you just take Medicaid insurance cards away from people that aren't using it, that doesn't save you any money. If you want to save money, you need to take healthcare out of the hands that are of people that are actually using it. And when they talk about how like this is some luxury to have healthcare, I would hate to break it to senators, but I did not enjoy chemotherapy. It was not a luxury being filled with poison every 2 weeks. Right. Yeah. When I went through radiation treatments, when they burned my body from the inside to stay alive, that was not a fun vacation. People don't get these medical procedures for fun. They get it to try and live better lives, to stay alive, to try and cure or treat diseases or conditions. Again, nobody is enjoying their healthcare treatments. These are survival programs for people that need it. And how they want to save money is ripping that away.
Yeah. roughly 15 million people will lose their health care coverage under this bill. So now it's going to the Senate. What's really important for people to understand is, all is not lost. This is still, we're smack dab in the middle of this process. Right now, we have a couple of conservative senators who are saying that they're a no vote on this right now because it doesn't go far enough. But this is going to be chopped up in the Senate and changed and then have to go back to the House. So, what are you hearing right now? What's the outlook in the Senate for these particularly egregious provisions?
Well, I mean, I am depressed that the House voted for this bill. It is fair to be upset, to feel all the feelings that they did this thing, and that all of them did this thing. All the Republicans did it, and they knew better, and they did it anyway.
And we won't let them forget that, by the way, also.
But like you said, if you roll back to 8 years ago to the fight to save the Affordable Care Act, Republicans in the U.S. House voted their bill again, too. They had a great big party at the White House to celebrate. And I remember this keenly because this was the day after my first chemotherapy appointment. So I was on the couch trying not to die and watching them party. So they did this before, and that was early May. This time it took them to mid to late May to get a bill through the House. But last time it was in mid-July that John McCain voted it down in the Senate because the Senate moves more slowly. So just because they got a bill through the House does not mean that this is a done deal. And as you pointed out, there are people on the right that think it doesn't go far enough, and there are people on the left that think it goes too far. And if they can't if they can't cobble together enough votes in the Senate to vote for one big bill, what they're going to do is probably pass pieces of it, the pieces that they can actually get enough votes for. The best victory would be they pass nothing, because there are very few things in this bill that I would consider beneficial, and it's all a cover just to give tax breaks to rich people. This is all really about making sure that Elon Musk can have more rockets and Jeff Bezos can have more yachts and more wives, whatever. But what we need to
Trophy
do
wives,
is
that inspiring commencement speech that Trump said over again. Anyway,
we need to stop them in the Senate. And so the best way you can do that right now, don't let your representative off the hook, especially if they voted for this, or if they didn't bother to vote at all, like some Republicans. But you need to contact them, make sure they're hearing from you every day. But your senators especially need to hear from you. People like Josh Hawley, a conservative senator from Missouri, a Republican, wrote an op-ed saying protect Medicaid. He needs to live up to that and not vote for this bill. So everybody listening, your work is not done. I'm sorry. Is contact your senators. And if your senators are already good on this issue, then start telling your story. Start sharing your story on social media. Maybe write a letter to your local paper, because you can reach so many people that don't even know this fight is going on. And another issue is that people may not realize that they are even on Medicaid, because every state calls it by a different program. So you may think, I don't need to worry about Medicaid. I'm in Wisconsin. I'm on Badger Care. Well, Badger Care is Medicaid in Wisconsin. But even apart from all that,
here in California. Yeah.
Exactly. Even apart from all that, if you are not on Medicaid, you know someone who is, and or the health system relies on the money from Medicaid to stay afloat. So if there are these drastic Medicaid cuts, it may be your local hospital goes under. It may be some of your providers, like there was a quote circulating, a speech therapist that stopped taking patients that went under because Medicaid went away. So everybody will be affected if you touch the healthcare system in America at all, in any way, and especially people in rural areas, in states that never expanded Medicaid. The hospitals are going to close. and people are going to suffer, and some people will die because of this bill.
Well, that's the reality, and we have our marching orders, and I'm hoping for another thumbs down moment in the Senate, and I think we can do it, but we have to keep the pressure up. Let me ask you the last question that we ask everyone on the show. That is, what is giving you hope right now?
Well, 2 smoothies on your birthday is a hopeful thing.
Doubling up. What is your smoothie? What is your go-to smoothie, by the way? This is the important question I should have asked from the top.
Well, at the Smoothie King for my lunchtime smoothie, I think I had more of a fruit. I think there was some mango and some pineapple. And then for my evening smoothie at Tropical Smoothie Cafe, and I totally should be endorsed by these people.
I know, really.
It was blue. So whatever things make it blue is what I had.
Spirulina, maybe, or something, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Blueberries.
Yes.
Okay, so we got to the bottom of the smoothie preference. What's giving you hope besides the smoothies?
Well, every week on my podcast, we're able to answer people's insurance questions, and sometimes we're able to give people answers that they maybe wouldn't have had any other way, and helping people to figure out how to dispute a medical bill, or if they're not sure how to get more affordable prescription drugs, things like that. Our healthcare system in America is broken. No argument for me on that. But helping people navigate it brings me hope, although I would love to see us have a bigger and better healthcare system and truly make America healthy again.
Absolutely. Agree there. Well, Laura, thank you so much for taking some time off of your birthday weekend, and it's a pleasure to finally get to have the conversation with you. So thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, Steve, did we get a phone call this week?
Well, we didn't. I don't know why you're teeing me up to be disappointed like that.
Okay, we didn't get a phone call this week, so you guys, 818-824-4286 is the phone number that we need you to use to tell us what you're doing to make a difference. But I am going to read to you, Steve, a comment that I got in my newsletter yesterday because I loved it. And I think that this is deeply hopeful. So this was a subscriber, Deborah D. And she wrote, after the news about Medicare broke last week, I created a sign that says, reconciliation bill will cut Medicare. Check it out. And then she goes on to write, there may be plenty of folks on board with cutting Medicaid, but they've believed the lies about protecting Social Security and Medicare. I held that sign on a busy street corner at rush hour Wednesday and Thursday. This is a low-tech way to educate. I will be doing it again. And I love this so much, and it made me think of this. There's a coalition of groups called the Visibility Brigade that is doing a similar thing where they go and stand on overpasses. And they do signs. They've got a couple of placards, and they'll have a message sort of like that and do it for like an hour during rush hour. And people stand around and sort of wave at drivers as they read these signs. And they're doing actually a big nationwide thing this week on May 30th and 31st, where they're going to have messages on overpasses all across the country. And they are going to say the state's initials and then fights fascism. So these kinds of things, just one person or a small group of people getting up, going somewhere you're visible, and just holding a sign. I don't think we can underestimate how powerful that is. It's really powerful.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much to your reader for sharing that. I wish I had gotten a picture of this, but it reminded me that we drove by. We were down in Orange County, down in Newport Beach over the weekend, and on PCH and Jamboree, if you're listening and you're in that area, there were 2 people, one on each corner, holding up signs protesting Trump and the regime. And I wish I had taken a picture because it was so awesome. It wasn't a big group. It was 2 people in a very conservative area. Of course, we laid on the horn for them and clapped and gave them the thumbs up. But it's so inspiring, and that's going to educate people. We have to be out there. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. It goes to what we always talk about. We are ripples on a pond. We don't get to see the results of our actions. We don't get to see who they touch or how they're influenced, but we get to act and we get to create those ripples. And so thank you to your reader once again for what she's doing. And, if you happen to be listening and you were on PCH and Jamboree over the weekend, thank you so much for doing that too.
That's right. And if you want to join the Visibility Brigade, by the way, check out the work they're doing. It is fantastic. They are at visibilitybrigade.com. They've got a toolkit to teach you how to do something similar in your neighborhood. So it's great. All you need is an overpass, and God knows we have enough of those.
That's right. All you need is some markers and craftiness and an overpass, and you're set. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Please don't forget that all of the links, like to Visibility Brigade and everyone else, are on our show notes. So click those links and take action. Please do subscribe, rate, and review our show on Apple. That really helps us find more listeners, YouTube or wherever you're listening. And share our show with your friends and family and make sure they are taking action as well. If you are able to support our show on Substack, we would be very grateful for that. And you'll get an ad-free version of our show there as well. We will be back next week with some more Practivist pods. So until then, don't forget, hope is an action.